Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Genesis Community Livecast. This is our Genesis Shapers Recap episode for May 2021. And we're going to be covering the Shapers meeting Studio Press big changes. You probably saw the announcements by now around big changes coming to Studio Press. So right after that announcement, we had a meeting with the Shapers meeting, and we're really looking forward to recapping that with you here today. For those who don't know me, my name is David Vogelpohl. I've been a proud member of the Genesis community for over 8 years, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers. Joining me for today's episode, I'd like to join back to the Shapers Recap video series, Carrie Dils of carriedils.com. Hey, Carrie.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back. Can I make the joke about you being lucky to get a job at carriedils.com in every episode you return for?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. It does not ever get old. I love a good dad joke. Do you know where I get my dad jokes from, Carrie?
No.
The database. So it's chock full of dad jokes. You check it out. Check it out. Yeah, exactly. Then also joining us for this episode, you may have heard of this gentleman as well. I'd like to welcome the co-creator of Genesis, Mr. Nathan Rice. Nathan, welcome to the livecast. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm great. I'm very good. Thank you.
Good. How's the weather? You're in North Carolina, right? If I'm getting that right.
At the moment, I am. I live in South Carolina, but I'm in North Carolina right now. Yeah.
Really? Like I got the state wrong where you live, but you just happen to be in the state I got wrong.
My wife's family is from here, and we're visiting at the moment. Yeah. So
nice. What a happy coincidental mistake.
I know. Yeah.
Nice. Well, if this is your first Shapers Recap episode, I'll kind of let y'all know how it works. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the questions we asked the Shapers during the meeting, and we're going to talk about some of their responses and observations and kind of go through it one by one. So the very first question we ask in every meeting, Nathan, do you know what the very first question is we ask in every meeting?
I don't.
Can we get a show of emoji for people who are able to make it today?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here,
let's see who we got up here. We got Mike Hemberger of BizBudding, Brian Smith on the Genesis product and engineering team, Nawai Bidola of Awesome Press, Ryan Kenstra of the product and engineering team, Nick Croft of Genesis Explained book, and many other claims to fame, Remkus DeFrias, Travis Smith, good to see him there. Brian Gardner, y'all may have heard of Brian Gardner, the original founder of Studio Press. He was there joining us. John Brown of 9 Seeds, Phil Johnson of the engineering team, Carrie Dils. Carrie, you put a boat emoji here. Why did you put a boat?
I'm out here in sunny California, and I just kind of wanted to drop a sailboat in as something that I might have seen that day.
Nice. Do you sail?
I went for the first time this past weekend, and I nearly wrecked the boat. So the answer is no, I cannot sail.
Oh, okay. But you did kind of sail. You just almost wrecked when you did it. So I'll remember, don't you wreck scooters too?
I wreck everything. I am a breaker of.
Did you break anything? Please say
no. Please, no, not this time.
Broke?
Okay. Not this time. No, but she has.
Oh, that sounds like a whole other episode. John Brown and Anita both settling on the Dancing Panda. Interesting choice by the two of them. New addition here, we have Cameron Furman. Cameron, I apologize if I get your last name wrong. Cameron's on the Genesis product and engineering team. She's a new addition. She joined to get insights from the Shapers as she thinks about the future of products within the Genesis suite. Again, we mentioned Nawai, Remke, they double emojied. It's like they're saying they were here twice. We had others join as well. We got Jonathan Jeter, Anita Carter, folks like that. So on to the first topical question. We asked, would you like these unauthenticated links to download 100% verified copies of the most recent version of the Genesis framework and sample theme to help your workflows? So for context, we announced essentially that Genesis framework and sample would be made free, and then you would be able to download them easily from the Studio Press website, and also perhaps work it into your workflows through these links. And so a lot of the shapers or theme providers or others that are creating tools for the Genesis ecosystem, and so this can be particularly helpful for them. Did anyone say no? Nathan, I think they all said yes.
I don't think anybody said no, but there's a couple of mentions of preferring an open repo, I would prefer that too. It's just really hard.
Can we break this down? Like, for the
Sure.
folks that aren't familiar? So we have like a link where you could download the Genesis framework or sample theme and get like a verified copy, most recent version of it. So that was what the question was about. But you said, well, yeah, like everyone thought that was a good idea, but then they had also requested that the Genesis framework repo be made public. So what is like the drawback of doing that? Just like what would it mean if it were public? Because like people can access the software, but like it kind of comes with a cost of making the repo itself public.
Yeah, in open source, it's nice. It would be nice to have the repo be open, because then people could request features, they could contribute code without having to go through the validation process and being added manually to the repository, which is the process that we do now. The drawback is the fact that people tend to use open repos like that as a means of getting support. StudioPress, as an owned entity of WP Engine, provides support, but they do it through official channels, and it is part of our revenue model, is that we, in order to provide support, which costs us money, we do require some sort of subscription or some sort of payment in order to receive that support. A lot of people, they want to go through the repo to get support, and a lot of times what that just ends up being is a lot of dead threads. And because we can't possibly monitor the repo for every support request that might happen to come through. So in order to avoid that eventuality, and there may be ways of mitigating that in the future that we haven't thought of yet, but for now, we're not quite ready yet to make that decision to open the repo up.
If somebody's watching this though, and they're like a super Genesis nerd, and they've like got like good ideas perhaps, and like experience in building software, like if they wanted to participate like in the contributor channel in Slack, would that be a good place for people to hang out? Or like, what if they aspirationally thought they might want to contribute? Like, what's the path at least for consideration?
Yeah, generally speaking, we tend to not turn anyone down. If you want to get in there, we do have a couple of things that we kind of ask of you, but they're not requirements. But yeah, all you need to do is make a request, and the contributor channel within the Genesis, I guess it's the Genesis WP Slack channel, is the place to request that access.
Yeah, absolutely. It's genesis.community has a link to register for the Slack channel or account, should I say? Trying to get all my Slack lingo right here.
Yeah.
So if you haven't gotten in there, check it out. Thanks for letting folks know about that path and the considerations behind making the repo public, Nathan. That was awesome.
Sure.
Next question. What are the positive changes you're expecting or seeing in your business related to the StudioPress big changes announcement? So framework free, sample free, free Genesis Blocks Pro and Custom Blocks Pro for Pro Plus customers, all that stuff that was in the blog post a few weeks ago. Carrie, you have a Genesis-based business. What's your answer to this question? Like, what positive changes would you expect from those you engage with in your business?
Yeah, well, my sentiment kind of echoed what other theme sellers were saying, and that it just eases the friction of, you got to go to StudioPress to buy this framework, and then you come to my site and buy the theme. And if you want Genesis support, you go here. If you want that, it just simplifies and streamlines the whole process. And it's a bonus because as theme creators, our customers don't have the extra expense of the framework. So very cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love how Mike Hemberger put it here. Way less confusion all around. And, Mike's there with BizBetting in their theme shop. And so, you kind of hit on this, is that these Genesis framework theme shops are selling their themes, and then they tell their customers if they don't already have the Genesis framework, they got to go buy it. And like some of the customer support feedback is like, you're trying to rip me off. This is a bait and switch, things like this. And it was just like extremely negative outcomes for folks. And I don't think it was making anybody happy. So, really glad to be able to bring that change here. Nathan, how many times have you been asked to make Genesis framework free over the years?
Not only asked, but, I've asked if it was possible. I definitely want to echo what Mike said, though, to some degree, because when it comes to the choice between a user, or if you're a third-party theme developer, do you want someone to buy the theme through your site, or do you want to buy it, or do you want them to buy it through StudioPress? in order to avoid that confusion, you almost want them to go through StudioPress, because that way they get both things delivered at once. Now, with them running their own sort of user portals and purchase pages and things like that, being able to include the third-party themes being able to include Genesis framework with their third-party themes makes that the more, attractive option for these third-party theme sellers. And it just so happens it's the only option at this point. We're pointing everyone to those sites. I know we'll get to it in a second, but we're pointing everyone to those sites where they can purchase and have that relationship with those theme developers directly, which is just better all around.
Yeah, and you're kind of talking about kind of one of the other major areas of changes that should be released around or on June 8th, which is the fact that third-party themes in the StudioPress marketplace. So not only will they not have to require their customers to go buy framework from StudioPress, but their listing on StudioPress will link directly to their theme store, so they can benefit from the full purchase amount for that and help to support their business. The customer has a more complete and less confusing experience and gets to success faster, which I think is the whole point of all this. I think my favorite comment, though, from this whole thread, there's a lot of positivity all around. Brian Gardner of the year, just to kind of echo that sentiment that you shared, Nathan, like there's this desire even prior to the acquisition, but him just kind of restating, I've always loved the idea of giving Genesis away, and really saying that he was glad to see that it finally happened. So, glad to have that there. Lots of heart and Genesis logo emoji on that one from Gardner. So that one means a lot to me. All right, next question. What are the negative changes you're expecting to see in your business related to these announcements? So like we want to understand like the good stuff, but we also want to understand maybe like the not so good stuff. I think the first question is like you need Anita right from the get-go. I've had I've had people ask how long the framework will exist now that it's free. I think for me, as I think about that question, I think like in general, of course, software ultimately, if you look like way out in the future, of course, always has an end of life. I think as I think about the framework, though, it is critical to a ton of websites. It's critical to a lot of theme businesses. It's critical to our themes, including the ones we'll continue offering after June 8th. And I would say that I don't think anyone involved here, Nathan or anyone, myself or anyone else, would put customers in a position where their sites are significantly at risk. And so we have no plans to, wind down the framework. That's, forever statements are forever statements and they're impossible to make, but there's no plan to wind down the framework. And I mean, Nathan, can you verify that? I
can absolutely verify. The framework will be available and maintained for as long as the framework is relevant and is useful to people. And so long as we have, good night, we still have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sites that we know of that are still actively running Genesis framework, some version or another. And so for us to think that we could even entertain the idea of abandoning the Genesis framework is like, it would be an insult to the community. It really would be. And on top of that, I believe that the framework, we want to make sure that we're not doing things that are, I guess, too backward looking. But at the same time, we also understand that we have this community of users who use the framework, and we don't want to do anything that would make them feel like they are being abandoned in any sort of way. So the intention is to continue to maintain the framework and to make it, if there are ways in which you believe that it could be more useful to you going forward, please let us know those things. Our eye is obviously on blocks because that's the future, but is there a way we could integrate blocks into the framework better? Are there things that we can do that can continue to make the framework relevant to you?
I think you're hitting on some themes here. I would say, like, out of all these announcements, we announced it to partners kind of first so they could be prepared and things like that, and then announced it to the broader community. And I've heard feedback from all around, and I would say overall has been incredibly positive. I would say the one part, though, where people start asking a lot of questions is like, well, what about the future? Like, what's going to happen next? And like, if I think about like what you just talked about, this notion of like, forward looking and backward looking, I think, and we're going to be publishing content around this in coming weeks, but as you think about the future of WordPress, we know that full site editing in WordPress core is coming, and hopefully in 2021 here. But this is like the very first iteration. And I know that, Nathan, you and the rest of the engineering team and the product team are working hard towards making sure that when that happens, the Genesis community doesn't look around and say, well, what are we supposed to do? And so like answering those questions are critical. Now, as you think about themes today, at least for me anyways, and we think about this notion of what will eventually maybe be known as classic theming. And I air quote that because this is how every theme is built today. I remember somebody in a social thread said, well, with all this changing with the blocks and everything, I just feel like I should like move away from Genesis framework and use something else to build themes because like I need something more stable. And my reply back was, well, if you look at the framework itself, it's actually incredibly stable. As a matter of fact, this kind of very stable mode is on purpose while the team focuses on making sure the Genesis community has an answer to what are we going to do for FSE. And I think the other part of that, being rooted in the free tools, Genesis blocks, custom blocks, and block theme, which again, we'll be talking about in specificity later. These again are forward-leaning products, forward-leaning projects. And that's not to trash talk the classic way of theming that the framework uses and every other theme framework thingy on earth for WordPress right now. It is all classic theming. For me, that forward-leaning posture, Nathan, is, I think it's hard to understand. I think like if you weren't doing that, it'd be like, oh, everything's stable. I love it, right? Like nothing's changing. But of course, the underlying current of WordPress is changing. So I think like to me, this was the biggest negative sentiment I heard, which was, well, wait a minute, I haven't heard about block theme in a while. What's going on with that? How is this blocks and collections thing supposed to work together? Well, I guess I got to go use another type of classic theming framework instead of Genesis framework because you're doing block stuff now. And it's like, no, that's not really how it works. So I think
no, not at all. And I would add to that, DV, that there's the things that we're doing inside Genesis Blocks and Genesis Blocks Pro are, we have to stop thinking of Genesis as the framework. It's more of a suite of tools, and of which the framework is a part of that, and the child themes to skin them. But then also you've got blocks, and within Genesis Blocks, you've got collections, which are meant to be used in classic themes. There's no such thing as an FSE theme right now, right? It's nothing but, so use your Genesis framework, use a child theme, whether it's third party or first party or custom, it doesn't matter. And then use Genesis Block to drop those collections in and get yourself a website built in way less time than it took you in the past.
Have you seen the blog post that Rob Stenson did on the StudioPress blog on creating a custom collection from scratch?
I did, yeah.
That is wicked cool. For those watching, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, go over to studiopress.blog. If you're building custom Genesis child themes, you're going to love building custom collections. It is super. I can't believe how good a job Rob did on that. Did you read the Rob article, Carrie? Have you made a collection yet?
I have read it and I'm in the process of creating a collection. And if I could just put a bug in for WP Engine Summit coming up in June, I might be talking about that topic.
Oh, you are. Oh my goodness. And I'm totally not cross-promoting events here. Yes, the WP Engine Summit. Check it out there on Google. I wish I had like memorized the URL I could read out here. But yeah, check it out there. We are doing registrations, and then you're giving a talk, and it's going to cover creating a collection.
Well, it's a 30-minute talk, so it's going to be in
so line by line
mode.
of the code then, right?
Yes, exactly. Live demo, all, no, but I'll be referring folks over to Rob's article too for a more in-depth look.
Yeah, that has me so excited. It also has me excited about like the economy possibilities or monetization possibilities for theme providers. Is like, I had somebody ask me like, could I just sell a collection? I'm like, well, yeah, you could actually, or you could have a theme with multiple collections. There's all kinds of possibilities there. And so I think like spelling out like, and we, of course, again, keep in mind, FSE is changing, right? We don't really know where everything's going to land, but I think like providing a window into that forward-leaning posture, what that means. But to your point, Nathan, like you don't have to wait for FSE to use blocks or to use collections or to build your own collection. This works right now. So, in blocks itself and creating your own custom collection, that's free, 100% free on WordPress.org. So, no upsell on that or any, just like right there, ready to go. And I think having those capabilities available now is kind of a nice middle ground between like doing nothing and like leaning all into the future. It's like this very agile type progression into FSE, which I think is great, but I know it can be confusing sometimes as you think about those forward-leaning postures.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Sorry, Nathan. I want to make sure we get through all of these. So the next question was, what did we not change that you wish we would change? And there's quite a few answers here.
I think Nawai pointed out, and as someone who's representing the Spanish Genesis community, that the pro subscription price is still a little bit on the expensive side.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if his audience is, because like Genesis Pro is obviously built for someone building lots of websites, right? It's $360 a year. It includes the themes we make. It includes all the collections in Genesis Blocks Pro and the advanced features in Genesis Custom Blocks Pro. But like if I'm building a website, I'm not going to pay that every year, right? And so as I think about the answer to Nawai's question or just observation is, I think even that price, though, sometimes maybe for certain freelancers and agencies can still be a little rough. I think as I think about it like a toolkit, it's a time machine, right? You have a collection of things that help you build faster. And if you're using it and getting value out of it in that way, well, then that price isn't so pricey. But if you're an individual, if you're buying a one-off theme for a one-off site, then no, that's not a good value. And in that case, for me, it would either be, again, as we think about that June 8th date, using like the free sample theme that you customize, or just buy from a third-party theme provider, one of these Genesis themes, and they do an amazing job and they're able to get really deep on niches and things like that. But I do think, Nawai's point is relevant. Like even, the 360 price point even isn't for everyone, even at the freelancer and agency side. So
on the whole, though, not too many, there weren't too many responses to this one, which made me think, well, you guys did pretty good.
A lot of those things, a lot of the changes we made, framework free, solving the, what I call the icky funnel problem, where you had to buy a theme one place in the framework on StudioPress. Every single one of those were things that came up the very first week after the acquisition. I did a listening tour. And of course, I'd been in the Genesis community for a while, but like working at WP Engine and then going through that. And, John Brown, I think Carrie, we spoke right after that. Just as many people as I could talk to. And what you saw in that blog post were the main bullet points from that very first week of feedback. So it's glad to see folks not mentioning other things we missed, but I'm sure like nothing's perfect. So that was fun. All right. So the last question here, I feel like we've kind of talked through already, kind of in prior sessions, but sections as the three of us here have chatted through it. But it says the future of third-party FSE Genesis child themes will kind of loosely be based on Genesis blocks and custom collections. We're planning comms and shaper meetings in the future around this. And we asked them like, what do you want us to talk about in those comms and discussions? And I think like, if you look at the feedback from like Nick and John, well, let's start with Nick. I think like generally, I thought the answers were really more centered around like, well, be clear with what you mean about FSE and what you mean about how these tools work together. And should I not use framework anymore? Because these things are going to exist. That conversation we kind of had earlier around, again, everything's a classic theme now. So there's nothing to switch to that's not dealing with the same situation. And if they're not forward leaning these other frameworks, that might be something to think about as well. Anything you would add based on that, Nathan, on what you saw there in the responses?
Yeah, I mean, Nick's I see Nick's follow up here. We have John Brown talking about the marketplace and what themes are
I think that's like
that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a separate chunk. I
think,
is it versus that? Well, no, I'm just saying, like for me, as I think about these responses, like John's represents like marketplace considerations, And then Nick is kind of more focused on the FSE side.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand people's right now there's confusion and it's understandable. Like in other words, what I'm saying is like, I don't feel like there's any way for us to really alleviate some of the confusion that's out there, because it's kind of a confusing time if you're building sites for clients or for yourself or for whoever, and you're trying to figure out, okay, do I continue to invest my time into the Genesis community, the Genesis tools and stuff like that? It can seem frustrating and a little bit confusing on the surface, but I would say that to sort of harken back to what we were saying before is that Genesis continues its development. It's just not happening exclusively within the framework. So follow along that way. We will continue to, communicate and build those tools and try to communicate. I mean, obviously we can always do better, but to try to communicate the value of those tools, really lean into the free stuff. I know people have, talking the last question about, it's a little too expensive to go pro, understandable, lean into the free stuff. We're going to be leaning into the free stuff too, trying to get more collections into the free plugin, more features into the free plugin, really try to build that out. But I don't think that the confusion is not going to go away, but at the same time, don't feel like the confusion should keep you from doing things that you've always done. Genesis is going to be here for you for as long as, I can maintain my energy levels, and our team certainly has a full commitment to continue to make Genesis better for everyone who uses it.
Yeah, I think that's probably been one of the more exciting things watching evolve under your leadership, post-acquisition in particular, was the fact that it's not just you, right?
No.
I'd say there are probably times in Genesis's past where it was just you, kind of in a way, maybe you and a couple other folks. And I think like your leadership at building a team around the Genesis suite of products, and having the energy to be the forward leaning, but also having what is the word I use it all the time, the redundancy in people, and the fact that things aren't just tied to one person. Like, these are key benefits that I think are rooted around not just your efforts, but just your entire teams.
Yeah, and we're in heavy experimentation mode right now. I mean, that's the kind of the world we live in. But we're doing the experimenting. We're trying to do the tinkering and the hypothesis testing and stuff like that behind the scenes, so that we can answer questions for the Genesis community that maybe one day you would have to ask yourself, but hopefully we would be able to have asked those questions, come up with a solution, and provided it to you to save the time, so that we're not all doing the same silly experiments over and over again individually, that collectively as a community, Genesis, we can kind of move forward into the future together.
Totally. Love that. Well, thanks for breaking trail, Nathan. And I know you get some thorns along the way, but I'm glad to be able to, work with you. And I think, a lot of folks really appreciate the path you and others help blaze to set them up for success. And it's okay if you want to lag back a little bit on the trail and take the comfortable part and wait for the thorns to be cleared. But I'm glad that y'all are up there doing that for everybody. So really, really thank you for that. To kind of get to John's comment here in response to this one, and I think I'm just going to kind of dovetail this even into the next question we asked, which was, adding new themes to the StudioPress marketplace will be easier to accomplish in the future. What types of themes do you think we should have in the marketplace that we're missing? Now, John's prior comment was around well, in the future in the StudioPress marketplace, what is a Genesis theme? And so we kind of talked a little bit about the notion around, well, really what that means likely in an FSE context is that they have Genesis blocks and a plugin that interacts with Genesis blocks. But then, of course, on day one, not everyone's going to be using FSE themes. So you're going to have this period over probably a couple of years in just general WordPress theming. Again, this is not Genesis stuff. This is stuff we're reacting to, where you'll have kind of this dual world, people using FSE-based technology and people using classic theming. And so I do personally think it's incredibly important to adopt, to at least start experimenting early, and give it time to cook before you adopt until you're comfortable. But I think, as I think of the marketplace in general, and well, what's a Genesis theme in the future? It's either something using the framework or something using likely blocks in that future state. Would you high level? Does that sound about right?
That's exactly. I mean, these are our at the moment, these are our flagship products. And we have supportive products like our custom blocks tool, which helps you create your own custom blocks. But in general, when it comes to the ones that are going to be used by the most people, it's going to be framework at the moment, and then blocks secondary to that. But at some point, you may see that flip, but those are the ones that we're probably going to see the most people using, and therefore those are the ones that we're going to invest in the most when it comes to our resources and future features.
Nice. Well, I know we got some diehard custom blocks fans out there, Nathan. So, love your children equally.
I'm one of them. I love custom blocks, and I think that what
I know
Ryan
you do.
and I mean, what they've done and what they continue to do with custom blocks is remarkable. How that's and the things that they're already thinking about doing in the future. I'm a big fan, big fan, very supportive of Ryan and his endeavors there.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Watching y'all work together is really fun stuff. I think, and I can't remember exactly where Anita Carter replied on this, but she's mentioned this to me in multiple occasions. Is like a lot of the themes in the StudioPress marketplace have a masculine style. And she felt like having more feminine styled options would be helpful. Carrie, have you noticed that, or do you not notice that, or like, does that stand out to you in terms of like design choice?
It doesn't probably stand out as much to me as Anita, but Anita also works primarily with feminine themes and providing support for like
food bloggers and stuff,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I got you.
But I'll kind of dovetail this into another conversation that came up there. But the way that themes are categorized currently is like there may be four. It's a business theme, or it's a whatever theme. There's not that many categories to help people connect with the kind of themes that they're looking for. And I think based on my own experience as a theme creator in the past, think about it with like real estate, staging a site, or staging a home. Like you want it to smell good and the couch is already there and whatnot. And it might not occur to someone to use a food blogger theme, for instance, as a personal blog or as a travel blog, although they could totally use it that way. So whether it's adding, pointers to more feminine styled themes or whatnot, I think
cross tagging and stuff, right? Like let you find the
exactly.
thing. John posts this filter screenshot from the StudioPress theme directory, and it makes me cry a little actually with how difficult it is to use. But yeah, I think these are excellent points, and giving people that kind of path for navigability. And I liked how you were thinking about that in terms of maybe more intuitive ways to kind of filter and search there. So that is something we're working on. And so looking forward to hopefully bringing some improvements there.
It should also help, by the way, to reducing the overall number of themes that you have to sort of, wade through. That's going to help people find the thing that they need to find too. I mean, having these old legacy themes, it's just taking up space. And so this really refines it down to the best of the best. Yeah, and then the third parties too.
Yeah, particularly those block enabled ones. I mean, that's a really good point. As themes evolve over time and WordPress evolves, not every theme is, maintained or advanced in the same way over time. And this is natural for any theme ever in a sense, particularly big groups of them. But I remember, Carrie, it's funny, you pointed out like people will often like not choose a theme because it says like lifestyle on it. And I remember in my agency days sending clients to StudioPress, and I was like, just pick any theme and we'll make it into your website. And I was like, but just completely ignore like the colors and like, just look at the layout, right? And like they could not get over like it says real estate, so I must use it for real estate or something. Like it just like blew their mind that they should think about it like in the context primarily of layout and color and I guess content. But it's really interesting. But I'm looking forward to those improvements on the filter side. So that looks like it from the responses. Anything else you want to add here, Nathan, on this one?
No, it was a great Shapers meeting, and the lead up to this too, the different the meetings that we had up to this, and of course all the internal meetings that we've had in the lead up to the decision to do all these things. I've just been very impressed with the positivity and the support that we've gotten all along the way. this is, as Gardner mentioned, and I'll reiterate that this is definitely something that I think we even talked about this in that first. Do you remember my first trip out to Austin? That big meeting in the
I do. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, the real secretive, under cloak and dagger and everything. So
Wait, was this pre
the
okay,
pre-acquisition meeting?
Okay,
Yes,
I got you.
Yeah, even in that meeting, we were having conversations about, like people at WP Engine were asking, why haven't you given this away for free yet? And we're like, well, we want to, but for a small business, it's where Genesis individual sales of Genesis framework itself made up such a huge portion of our revenue, that would hurt. But in a big organization like WP Engine, it definitely feels like it's more doable. And finally, we've been able to do it, which is super exciting.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm so glad we were able to get there. And, again, thank you, Nathan, for your leadership over these last few years and after the acquisition, of course, prior. Been a fan of yours before this. And so, getting the opportunity to work with you here in this case, and to do these things with you means a lot to me. So just wanted a hat tip to you and your team for what y'all have done to get us here. And we still have June 8th ahead of us. So I know y'all have a lot to do.
Oh, yeah.
But I just wanted to kind of give you a quick hat tip. So thank you, Nathan.
No, thanks. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Carrie, for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
Cool. If you'd like to check out more about what Carrie's up to, just a reminder, you can visit carriedils.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please stay tuned for future episodes of the Genesis Community Livecast. Again, I'm your host, David Vogelpohl. I've been a member of the Genesis community for over 8 years, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers.